we are back again, one more episode of Beyond the Box podcast. And today I'm joined by CEO and co-founder of Roomvu, Mr. Sam Mehrbod. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. I hope there's going to be many people watching this. So yes, excited to be here. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Sam, let's get this kicked right off. Love to hear a little bit about your background, kind of where you have come from and grown up in the space, and a little bit about Roomvu and Roomvu's origin story.
All right. Okay. So my background is pretty mixed in various fields. I did my bachelor in computer engineering in the UK, then kind of did the academic path of trying to finish up the PhD. I did finish the PhD, but it was mostly in construction. Halfway through the program, I realized there's no money in academia. So basically switched path, became a realtor, and started my own construction company as well in the early days, 10 years ago. And basically, as an agent, I was pretty successful, about 5 agents in my team. And one day a co-founder came to me and it was like, you know what, you're pretty techie. Why don't we do something in the space? And that's where we came up with the first startup, which failed like many first startups. It was a lot of lessons. We learned a lot of things. Then in 2017, we did the first version of Roomvu where we created content. And here we are. After some pivots, we are here at Roomvu the way it is today.
Amazing. So tell me about that. Tell me a little bit about what the original kind of conceptualization for Roomvu was, and kind of how that's evolved, and what it looks like today.
All right. So we wanted to create content out of everything that we saw. So if there were MLS images, if there were MLS context, we wanted to turn it into beautiful content, give it away to agents to use. And that worked until we realized not every agent would have listings and not every agent would have content coming their way. So after that, we started doing a lot of creating a lot of tools for the agents so they can have like an online presence and so on. But we never created a niche product. Like every time we attack this, we always did like agent profiles, various things that they could use, but none of it was unique. And for that reason, it was always hard to get traction. In 2019, we raised a round. Everyone was excited about us, and I was excited to kind of go to the next step. At the end of 2019, we realized that we can basically turn news content, anything that comes out in every area, in every community, we can basically turn that into beautiful videos and make that and give it to the agents. And then that came out of this. Like we were like a photography company, we're a photography for hire company, and we had agents that would pay a subscription fee, and they would get in front of the camera, we give them content, and they would be like, hey, the market did this month. And well, we left this in Vancouver, right? And Vancouver got rainy in November, and a lot of agents canceled on us. They were like, no, thank you, I don't want to get in front of the camera. But they wanted this, like they wanted to share content. They wanted to talk about the content, because that's the first question you get as a realtor, right? Like, how's the market doing? And you're always coming up with like, which market? Like the detached did this, the attached did that. So we started automating a lot of that content, and we started creating these beautiful videos where we would just attach the agent branding to it and just tell people, hey, go share this. And so after a while, we realized we're creating a lot of content, but no one is coming into the platform to use them. Even if the agents were paying us a subscription fee, they'll be like, I forgot to come and get this content from you. So we're like, okay, let's create a calendar for them. So that's how we created that content calendar, which would eventually manage their entire social media for the agents. And
so tell me then, Sam, if I'm an agent and I come across, you know, how do I interface with you? So first of all, how do I find you? If I'm an agent and I think I need, you know, part of my branding strategy or my marketing strategy, I want to be able to deliver great content. How do I find out about Roomvu, first of all? And then what's that experience that I would go through to engage with you and to really utilize your service to enhance my brand?
okay, so essentially, if you're an agent in most communities, you've probably seen our videos that you just didn't realize it's us. But
And where would I see them? Where am I seeing them? On websites?
just social media, right? So if you've if you've been browsing your real estate feed, probably you've seen an agent sharing the content from Roomvu. And we have about 40,000 agents across the US and Canada right now. And what we've seen is just other agents seeing the type of content and they're like, oh, I like this, I want this. And they would find us and they would simply come in, they would give us their branding identity, like the names, the headshots, and things like that, the colors of the branding. And we start creating the content for them. All they have to do is just plug in their social media, like Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and they can just go back and close more business while we do the heavy lifting of social media for them.
Amazing. So you're posting all of this content kind of under that realtor's banner on their own personalized social media channels.
Yeah.
Amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. And how do you curate the content? So I guess the question is, what type of content, and you know, how do you know that that's the type of content that is resonating in that marketplace and is working to drive business to those agents?
So every day there's thousands of news pieces that comes out in every community. Let's say in San Francisco, there's a lot of blogs, there's a lot of especially like newspapers and like digital outlets that would write these good pieces into where the market is heading. We've built an AI that reads through all these, goes through the tone of these articles, because a lot of times the realtors don't want to post that the market is going down or we are about to witness the biggest crash in history or whatever. So no one wants to share. And so that's another thing, right? So we had to build this engine where it would just read the news. It would read through the content of each news article. And after that's done, all of these news is pre-selected and it comes to a human. So that human also reads through it. And then once that's done, we start making content out of that news piece. But there's a lot of AI interesting problems that we've had to solve. Like, for example, one of them would be when you talk about homes, the term homes and homelessness, they always collide, and they're not news to realtors, and no one wants to share those, right? So it's really a lot of interesting problems that we had to solve. Also, like the positive tone, like sentiment analysis, as we call it in the news piece, it's really interesting. So you have to have that positive tone in the articles when you're sharing. Sometimes like 5 outlets talk about a big event, that's also like taking higher priority into the news cycle.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's really interesting problem when you look at it, and understanding the whole concept from that article is also another problem to solve all the time.
Amazing. So Sam, if you thought about kind of that trajectory that you and Roomvu have taken kind of from the beginning to where you are today, what are some of the trends that you're seeing mostly in the marketplace? So trends around usage of your platform, maybe even trends around the type of content that consumers are engaging with. I'd love to hear a little bit of how you've seen that landscape shifting.
So there's an interesting problem here. Us as realtors, we want movie quality and movie length kind of advertisements. Like we want 3-minute, 4-minute content.
Right.
But on social media, you have maximum of like 3 seconds before your post is move to the next thing. So we always have this disconnect between what the realtor or the agent wants versus what the consumer of the product wants. So it's an interesting problem, and we're always trying to solve that. I think with the whole like, and nothing is helping this. Like Instagram is not helping this, TikTok is not helping this. The more we move through things, the more it's about like shorter content. Really,
Right.
really, like, just give me the headlines. I don't need all the details. I just need to know the market is safe. Thank you. Moving on. Or the market is stable. Thank you. So it's really interesting.
And that's from a consumer point of view. Consumers want that kind of bite-sized information. But what I'm hearing you say is your client base, who are the realtors, are looking for longer content. And I'm curious, like, have you dived into that? Do you have, have you been able to kind of build an understanding of why that is, like why the disconnect?
I think it's a lot of it is because we're all in love with our branding. So we think our branding is really cool, and in honest opinion, like every realtor thinks like a business owner, right? And business owners always love the branding, everything they've done. I always have this example. I wanted to partner up with an agent in my early days as an agent, and I went to him and it was like, "Hey, do you want to partner up? Let's just create a team." And it was like, "No, it's too late." I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "I already paid for my logo and branding." Like, dude, that's like $500. Let's just create another logo. But it was like, "No, I already paid for it. Thank you." So and that example always resonates when we're creating material for realtors, because they have so much pride in their branding, in their teams, in their like skills, of like whatever they want to put in these videos. They have so much basically a lot of it's a sensitive topic.
Fair enough.
And
fair point.
It's interesting, right? So
it's so interesting. So I just want to flip that conversation to the other side then, on the consumer side, and because my assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my assumption is that through your platform and through the technology, you're able to determine what types of content the consumer is finding most appealing. So what type of content are consumers really looking for, and what type of content do you think realtors ought to serve up a little bit more in the context of building their brand for the consumer?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So in terms, like we run ads for realtors as well, right? And the ad that everyone is familiar with is "What's your home worth?" Everyone runs this ad,
right,
and everyone loves it, and it's our most popular product. But if you said the rates, let's see what the rates do in 2022, you're gonna get a lot more leads with that piece of content than "What is your home worth?" And we've been trying to educate these realtors and say, "Hey, look, like you have to use the news piece to get the lead. You're not giving them the exact thing in the video, but the opening of that content is really a useful tool to get someone to opt into your marketing, to want to watch the rest of that video." And we've been trying this. The cost of generating leads with the actual news headlines is less than a third of cost of generating leads with "What's your home worth?"
Interesting.
And it's because you're actually giving value in that little article or thing that you're promoting, and everyone wants to know what's happening. Like it's you're using that excitement to basically generate leads, and you still educate the client, you still educate your audience and say, "Hey, this is what I think happens in the market. Hey, and this is the source. I'm not just making this up, right? It's coming from a credible source." So it's an interesting thing that we're trying to, and I think it's part education, part part education, part experimenting, a lot of these things. So
I love it. And so, I don't mean to get too philosophical here, but I feel like I can a little bit, because you are still an agent, correct?
Yeah.
And I know that you count yourself amongst, because I've even in this conversation, you've counted yourself amongst the realtor population, and even how you've phrased your responses. So do you think that, part of this is realtors being reluctant to share information that the consumer demands, because they're not prepared to respond to it, or maybe they don't feel that they're in the best position to be able to help consumers understand. So do you think the education component is a little bit on both sides, where, you know, realtors have an opportunity to educate consumers, but by virtue of doing that through their content that they're delivering, they then need to be able to backstop that information? And do you think that there's a little bit of that going on as well, where, you know, the industry at large or realtors at large could just also become more educated around things like, you know, the impact of rates and the impact of mortgage rules and regulations?
I'll be honest, like the biggest impact, like one of the bigger impacts of Roomvu is that, like when I look into my own Instagram page, I'm like, the rates are changing, or this thing is happening. So it is educating even me a little bit while I'm busy day to day doing all these things, right? I always say that, like, then I have to go and watch this video, like, what is this? What is happening here? So, and I think this is the actual. You're right. There's a lot of things happening in every community, and it's impossible to know them all. That's why brokerages had these sales meetings and so on. And
it's why there are companies like Roomvu to help serve up some of the content and kind of filter through it and find the things that are interesting. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
That's the but it's really interesting problem to solve, because the agents that are doing a lot of deals, the agents that are on top of the business, they know all these things. They know it. Like if you talk to them, they know this stuff. They're not gonna say, oh, let me look that up. They know what happened in that market. And if you talk to them, they own that space, right?
So Sam, one of the things that, you know, I'm curious about is, throughout the pandemic, obviously there has been more demand for online content and consuming online content, but we've also arguably lived through some of the most buoyant real estate markets, you know, of recent memory. And so, you know, do things like tight supply, you know, escalating prices in Vancouver, does that help your business or does that hinder your business?
I think it's a double-edged sword, because agents will close more deals, like in the past. Like they have closed more deals in the past year than ever before, and they could attribute this to their really strong marketing, or their network, or their referrals and so on. But I think the agents, like I've seen the downtimes as well, right? Like in Canada, we had a pretty bad 2010, 2011 market. Like a lot of people stepped out of the business. Another similar period was like 2016, 2017 era. There was a lot of change in the market. And I think that's the key. Like, it's important to be ready for the bad times while we make money in the good times. And to be ready for the bad times, you have to be that agent that's always there, that's always active in the social media, that's always in their sphere, like in the sphere of people that know you. They should know that Sam, the realtor, exists. He does all these things. And it's important to kind of have that. And I think the double-edged sword thing is that we might forget that, and we might be like, okay, it's going to be okay. I don't need this. And when the tougher times come, you'll be like, I wish I just spent a little bit on my marketing. I didn't
presence.
Yeah, and so on.
Yeah. So interesting. That, I mean, great response, because I think it comes back to some of those age-old questions. Is it an expense or an investment, right? And, you know, obviously keeping yourself top of mind in a market, you know, as buoyant and active as the Vancouver market, as an example, or San Francisco, or a number of the markets that you're involved in, is really, you know, kind of that investment in, you know, your future business as well. And I think that's the piece of it, is it's not just business for today, it's business for the future. So Sam, as the CEO of a growing startup, and a quickly growing startup, what are the things that keep you awake most at night?
I think I saw a talk recently. I don't know who was saying it, but I think as we go through different stages of a product, there are different things that a CEO must do. So initially, I was building, and they always say that like up to 10K, you have to build a product, because 10K a month, you have to build a product that people want to use. Once you've passed that stage and you're getting to 100K, you have to build systems, and you have to make sure that these systems work perfectly. And every piece of your work is like an engineer that just creates these systems, and you just have to make sure these systems stay stable, nothing happens to them. You lubricate all these like little nuts and bolts and just make sure hopefully this stays put. And then the next thing that is happening for us is, I think, you have to transition from that product or systems person into a people person, and you have to bring good people to help you doing what you did before. And I think that's one of the things that's keeping me up at night. Like, how do we go from 40 people to 100 people now? How do we create the culture? How do we make the right hires? And it's been a challenge for us, like, because I don't know, I haven't done this. I've only done up to this point, right? And it's a lot of learning. So it's one of those. So I would say
well,
this.
I can't. I mean, on one hand, I can completely appreciate the challenges. On the other, I'm so excited for you, because the first part, as you know, in solving any problem is being aware of the challenge. And, I love that you, as the CEO, have taken the opportunity to step back and kind of recognize that those are the transitions, and that's the current challenge at hand. And so kudos to you for that. And kudos to you and your team for growing and scaling your business to where you are today. Because there's just only so much more, growth for you guys to have. So just rounding this out then, if that's what keeps you up at night, what are the things that make you love getting out of bed to do this every day?
I think there's a lot of what we discussed, right? Like, there's a lot of disconnect between what we understand as marketing and what the consumers want. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do to even help the agents, people that they use a product, and tell them, hey, this is how you do marketing. It's not that. Like, stop posting your picture around it. I know you get more likes, but it's not it. Like, people need value from you. People need an added piece of information that they get from you when they watch your stuff, when they see you doing things. And social media is not just pictures of you and your dog. It's essentially all these other things. That's important. And as I was having a chat with Paul Lance the other day, and he's a partner with Katie, and we were mentioning this, that like, okay, it's 80-20, right? Like, you have to have your personal stuff there on your social media, talking about your day-to-day and so on. That's 20% of your social media, but 80% has to be looking professional, has to be content that's either telling how you did, or how you sold this place, or how you did things, and basically talking about the market happenings and so on.
So it's such a great point. And what I'm really hearing here is it's that mission-driven approach that really drives you to continue to build the company. Is how do you help your fellow colleagues really kind of bridge that gap between who they are as a person, but who they are as a business, and really help utilize social media and their marketing channels to to really facilitate for them. And I love that 80-20 rule. I know if you haven't heard it before, I say it all the time. It's that raw, real personal side of people that really helps forge relationships, and relationships ultimately at the end of the day are what we're all about, right? In business and in real life. So I love it. I love what you guys are doing, Sam. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you during the
final advice for founders is just resilience, because
I was just going to ask.
You would have, like, and it's not my favorite story, but it's a tough story. So in 2019, when we raised our first round, my co-founder, he got a job at Microsoft. And he was an amazing guy. I learned a lot from him. And I was on the stage at Plug and Play in San Francisco. 300 investors were watching me, and I was about to jump on the stage and start presenting what our product was. And you can imagine the stress and everything else. And right there, I open my email and I see a resignation from our co-founder. And he says, I'm leaving the company. I got this job. It's amazing. It's been a dream job, and I'm leaving. And I'm like, wow. And that, as you can imagine, that pitch didn't go well. And I was just, I thought this is over. Like this is done. What do we do now? And it was a sinking ship. And I think that the idea is to just keep going no matter what happens. It's all, you will always find a way. And
you do.
And that's the exciting part.
You do. And if I'm not mistaken, right after that, what you do is you meet the not yet, but soon to be managing partner of Reach Canada.
Yes.
And then you build a relationship and you just keep moving forward. But the point is you leverage the relationships you have, right? There is, to your point, there is always a way forward. And I'll never forget that just after that presentation, you and I met for the very first time at a coffee shop in San Francisco. So these things always work out, don't they?
Things always work. And
always work out.
It's fun. I mean, it's fun when we tell the story of the fun thing that happened. I hope it's always like that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things. But I think resilience in building that product, pivoting until you get it right, and just don't be afraid to say, okay, I did this thing. It's not right. It's fine. It's okay.
Agreed.
Do another thing. I would just pivot a little bit more. And right now, our motto is entirely different. We don't build products and test it. We build like mini versions of things. We test it and see if people actually want it or not. Then we go out and build it. And that's an expensive lesson we learned throughout the years.
But important lessons, right? You know, important lessons that you learn that, you know, allow you to scale a lot faster once you figure them out and are able to scale.
Yeah, I wish someone told us all these lessons when we started. Like, don't release a product on a Friday. Never do that. Like,
you know,
things could go wrong.
I feel like you could write it. I feel like you could be the one that writes the book, Sam. You can totally be the one that writes the book about all the little do's and don'ts about, you know, starting a company from scratch. You know, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing so many nuggets with us. One more opportunity. Anything else that you'd love to share with the crowd about, you know, about your own personal insights as a founder, about kind of your view on where you and your company are up to next, or anything else?
I think like real estate is really an industry where relationships matter, and the more I do things and the more we build products, the more we understand that we need to have a product where people want it, the product where people will talk about, and a product where its users are just extremely happy with the product. And I think that's one of the lessons that we've got. Like, you cannot release a buggy product and people would talk about it in a bad way, and it will backfire. And especially the people as well, right? And I think one of the key values Reach brought into Roomvu was like just being able to meet so many great people, great partners, and everyone at Roomvu is really thankful for that. And I think that's one of those things as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, where can anybody watching this find you if they want to learn more about Roomvu, if they want to connect with you more on a personal level, and get some more of these great insights that you've been sharing? Okay,
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Sam Mehrbod. You can find me at sam@roomvu.com. I would love to chat. And so I would always love feedback, and I would always love new friends in real estate tech community.
Amazing. Right. Well, thank you so much,
Sam.
Sam. Appreciate you spending the time with us. Take care.
Thank you.